Okay guys, this is Variant Chapter 9. I hope you enjoy it.
Chapter 9. That afternoon, we didn't have classes. Instead, Iceman announced that we had last-minute time to complete our contracts before they were renewed. The V's met in the maintenance room, and Curtis and Carrie handed out our assignments. In addition to the vacuums and mops, the maintenance room had a wide selection of hand tools, hammers and wrenches and saws, and I immediately thought of how I could use them for escape. I searched the pegboard for wire cutters to get through the fence, but didn't see anything too promising. There was a pair of pliers that might work, but it'd be suicide to get all the way over the wall only to have them fail. Extension cords, on the other hand, were as good as rope, and there were at least 3 of them. I couldn't help smiling as I turned back to Curtis for my assignment. It turned out to be trash duty. It was interesting, being able to walk the halls of the school in silence to inspect all the nooks and crannies. I started on the top floor, rolling a large garbage can down the halls of the guys' dorm. Another V girl was doing the same on her side, dumping the small trash bins. I peeked around some of the other rooms, but no one had much to look at. A few guys had some books, one had a guitar, and 3 rooms had TVs and video games. Mason had told me that those took almost 6 months' worth of points. I don't know what I was expecting in Oakland's room. A gun collection? A list of people to beat up? But other than an unmade bed and some smelly socks, nothing was out of the ordinary. I moved floor by floor, room by room, but the building was so big and there were so few of us that most of the trash cans were unused. On my way down to the basement, I stopped by Becky's office and emptied her bin. But Isaiah was talking to her, and I didn't want to hang around. I searched the basement for the detention room. The infirmary was down there, as well as dozens of small storage areas and a boiler room. I checked every door on the floor. The chip in my watch opened all of them since we had the maintenance contract, but none of them looked like what I expected for the detention room. It was just like the basement of any old building, cramped, dark, and plain. And then I found it, after I'd almost given up. It looked like the other storage rooms, cement walls, poorly lit. But I noticed the door was heavy when I swung it open, and as I looked closer, I could tell it was metal, painted to look like the other wooden doors. And the floor had a hollowness to it, like I wasn't walking on foundation cement anymore. I was standing in an elevator. I stepped out quickly, suddenly nervous that it might drop out from under me. As I stood at the door, I could see scratches in the paint. Doomed students trying to get out before the floor lowered? My muscles tensed and I wanted to run, but something stopped me. I took a deep breath, looked up at the security camera, its glass, lifeless eyes staring back at me, and I spit into the detention room. Then I went back upstairs. When the garbage bags were all gathered by the outside doors, I peered out the windows. I could see a few Havoc members, one in the distance riding a large lawnmower, and 2 more close by, trimming the bushes and edging the grass. Curtis had said that even though the rules allowed me to take the garbage out to the incinerator, the doors wouldn't open for me. I'd have to get one of them to open it. I held up my hand to pound on the window, but behind me I heard someone call my name. Jane. "Hey," she said, jogging down the hall toward me. She was holding a push broom and set it against the wall when she reached me. "Let me go with you. The V's use the buddy system." She pulled a few loose strands of red hair from her face and readjusted the elastic that held her ponytail. Her eyes sparkled happily, as though taking out the trash were her favorite pastime. I turned back to the window so that I wouldn't stare at her. "So, how do you like being a janitor?" she asked with a grin as she started knocking on the windows. Through the glass, I could see 2 people walking toward us. One was Skyver, and the other was a girl I didn't know. "It's awesome," I said. "That's why I signed up for the school in the first place." Bringing Bringing Jane along didn't make me feel any safer, but I wasn't about to tell her that. And besides, I didn't feel as nervous around Havoc as I did the day before. I'd refused to turn in Oakland and Mouse to the paintball refs for the overkill, and I'd cut Mash's handcuffs off. I figured they might cut me some slack. I tried to pick up all the bags, but Jane scowled at me and took 2 of them. So who's Private Ryan? Huh? You started to talk about him yesterday. Private Ryan at Omaha Beach? Was he a relative of yours? What? No, it's a movie. You've never seen that one either? Jane blushed. I've been in here for 2.5 years. That one's even older than Castaway. I didn't watch a lot of movies before I got here. I wondered how old she was, how old she'd been 2.5 years ago. But the doors opened before I could ask. Well, if it isn't the new kid and his girlfriend, Skyver said. I ignored him and pushed my way outside, turning to make sure they didn't stop Jane. Just heading to the incinerator, I said. Jane didn't seem bothered by Havoc, but she didn't look at either of them in the face. When she was past them, we headed toward the back of the school. In the distance, closer to the forest's edge, I could see one of the society's guards on a 4-wheeler. You need some alone time? Skyver shouted. They were walking slowly, following us. How old are you? I asked Jane, trying to get her mind off Havoc. She looked up at me with a smile. How old do I look? I don't know, I said. 17? I figured it was probably best to aim high. 16, she said. I'll be 17 in June. Skyver wasn't far behind, but it didn't look like he was trying to do anything other than intimidate us. So when you got here, I said, trying to do the math in my head, she cut me off. 13. Pretty great, huh? I couldn't imagine coming into a place like this so young. No one here now was younger than 14, and there were only a few of them. I looked over at her. I wanted to say something. It seemed so terrible, but I couldn't think of anything. It's okay, she said. Seriously, that's what I keep telling you. This place isn't that bad once you get used to it. It's all you've ever known. She rolled her eyes and grinned. That's a little melodramatic. The incinerator was a big rectangular machine, about 8 feet tall, and it smelled terrible. Curtis had told me that I didn't need to do anything to operate it. It was all automatic. A small sign indicated where to put the trash, and I tossed the first bag inside. Skyver shouted, "Nice job at paintball yesterday." I lifted the next bag up and in, and then the third. Skyver turned to goading Jane. "Did you know your little Benson wasn't in his room last night? I think he's cheating on you, but for some reason he was still in the boys' dorm. I wonder what that means." I threw the last 2 bags in the incinerator and then turned to look at Skyver. He was smiling nastily, but the girl behind him had left. I wanted to punch him in the teeth. Not for anything he'd said or even anything he'd done to me. I just felt like hitting him. Jane took my hand in hers. "Come on." I nodded and inhaled deeply. Holding her hand felt comfortable, but I knew I was squeezing too tight, angry about Skyver. We'd only taken a few steps when I noticed a small door in the side of the building. Judging by the slope of the grass, I figured it had to go into the basement, but I didn't remember seeing any exterior doors while I was down there. "Do you know where that goes?" I asked Jane. The image of the detention room was clear in my mind, and I knew there had to be more to the basement, something deeper down. She shrugged. We walked up to it, but didn't hear a buzz, and the knob was locked. "What are you doing?" Skyver shouted. I turned to him. "Do you know where this door goes? What do I look like, an architect?" "No, you definitely do not." He snarled and walked down to me. I listened for the buzz, but it didn't happen for him either. So the door wasn't open for maintenance or groundskeeping. "Aren't you supposed to get back inside and scrub toilets or something?" he said. Jane's fingers curled tightly around mine. I breathed out, long and slow. "I guess we better." That night I went to talk to Curtis. He was lying on his bed fiddling with his computer. I knocked on the open door. "What's up?" He sat up. "Oh, hey, Benson. Just entering the contract bids." Curtis punched a few buttons and then closed the computer with a click. "Speaking of which, we get paid tomorrow. You'll have a few points." "Nice," I said and leaned against his wall. "Too bad I won't be able to afford a fancy new ball gown for the dance." He laughed. "Don't worry, most of the guys will just wear their uniforms. The girls can buy dresses if they want, but I doubt many guys will waste our points on it." "I was wondering if I could ask you something," I said, looking toward his window. It was dark out now, and the moon was just over the horizon. There wasn't any haze. "Sure, what's up?" "How long have you been here?" "Not as long as some, I guess. Maybe a year and a half. I've stopped paying attention." "Were there ever more students than there are now?" He nodded, as if my questions weren't surprising. He clasped his hands together and gazed at the floor. "You mean total numbers, or do you mean have people ever left?" "Total numbers," I said. "I already know people have left, died." He glanced up at me. "I've never seen a body, you know. I mean, other than the war." "Huh?" "I've never seen a body of someone sent to detention. I always hold out hope. Maybe they're alive." "But I heard about what happens with detention," I said. "I heard about the blood." He stood up with a grim smile and moved to the window. "Wow, you really are more nosy than most of us. I'd been here a lot longer than you by the time I'd learned that." Curtis didn't make much sense to me. He ran after Ms. Vaughn's car. I thought that would mean he was trying to escape, like I was. But most of the time, he didn't seem like he was even interested. "What about total numbers?" I asked. "It's never been very high." He glanced at me over his shoulder. "You're wondering why the school is so big?" "Yeah. I don't know. We've all wondered." On a corkboard above his desk were a dozen pencil drawings. The school building, still life, faces I didn't recognize. "You do these?" I said, leaning over for a better look. "No, Carrie." "They're good." "I'll tell her." I stood back up and turned to him. "Who's the oldest here? I mean, who's been here the longest?" "That's easy. Jane." "Really? But she said there were people here before her." "That's the big mystery," he said with a shrug. "She explained it to Carrie once. 15 were here before Jane came. One morning, they were gone. I guess it was some kind of mass escape." "Did they get away?" Curtis shook his head and lay down. "No one escapes. If any of us ever got out of here, they'd tell the police and this place would get shut down. Anyway, those 15 were the only link to the past, and none of them confided in her. She was all by herself until more students were brought in." I nodded, but my heart fell into my stomach. She would have been young, 13, going through all the same things I was going through now, only completely alone. She must have been scared all the time. It was no wonder she kept saying things weren't so bad. They'd been so much worse. Looking back up at Curtis, I tried to push thoughts of Jane away. "So," I reasoned, "for all we know, this school's been like this for years, decades. Maybe. That's why I'm not society." "What do you mean?" "Some people say that we need to just ride it out, follow the rules, and keep our heads low. I agree a little with that, I guess." He smiled. "I mean, I don't think we need to try crazy escapes and fall out of trees. But I do think that, sooner or later, we're going to have to try something." "Right," I said. "They'll never just let us leave because we tell the police. So what does the society say about that?" "I think they're scared," he said. "I know it doesn't look like it, but I think they're just too afraid of punishment. Probably because they know better than any of us what the punishments are like." Curtis was right. It didn't look like it. Maybe Becky was scared, but Dylan, Isaiah, they couldn't be enforcing the rules just because they were too scared to break them. I looked out the window, trying to guess where the wall was, but all I could see was trees. "One last thing," I said, touching the glass and peering into the dark. "Have you ever seen smoke in the woods?" "The campfires, you mean?" I turned my head enough to look at him with one eye. He nodded. "You can see them from the girls' dorm better than here. Just little trails of smoke. Sometimes one and sometimes 8 or 10. We think they might be guards. Or a campground, I said. Could help be that close? Curtis laughed. Campgrounds. Now that's an optimist. Back in my room, I stayed up late on my little computer, scrolling through catalog pages of clothes, gear, jewelry, and games. There was nothing for sale that gave any insight into the outside world. No books, no magazines. Even the music we could buy for the dance was 50 or 60 years old. You know anything about computers? I asked Mason, close to midnight. A little, but not really. Anyone in here a hacker? He laughed tiredly. People have been trying that for as long as I've been here. Oakland looked into it. He knows computers. He said there's no consistent connection. The network is only up and running for a few seconds a day. That's when the school downloads our purchases and records our bids. He says there's just not enough time to hack it. Oakland? He's not as dumb as he looks. I nodded. Okay. I browsed through the contracts. Each one listed the chores to do, the requirements to fulfill, and each showed the current bid. As usual, none of the gang's bids were contested. They were all at the max points limit. I could have entered one if I wanted to, like everyone used to do. I thought about doing it to make Havoc mad, but then all of the V's would be stuck with extra work. I toggled back to the items for sale. The main page featured a wide array of dresses and a few suits. Who was crazier? The school, who was putting us through all of this, or the students, who were spending their hard-earned points on silk gowns, cummerbunds, bow ties, and flowers?